Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. I'm Dan Allen and I will not be your host today because we've got a Meet the Makers episode. What? More quality content and interviews in which people got to ask their own questions to some incredible people that work in the film industries. I'm interested. Well, I'm glad you're interested because, again, we have a corker. So that's a little recap on what Meet the Makers is, told in a dramatic or dramatised interaction between a couple of people that I just performed for you guys. But essentially what it means is I will not be here for the episode, but James Walker will be hosting a fantastic conversation, but with two writers who are fantastic and have worked on a bunch of stuff, and they are the lead writers on a show that's called Run, which has an incredible cast, including Olivia Colman. So very cool. And that show came out in, I think, 2013, but they're doing loads of cool stuff. Essentially, we're going to be speaking today, or James will be speaking today, to Marlon Smith and Daniel Fajemisin-Duncan. So, without any further ado, enjoy the episode.
Today we share thrills and spills from the cutting edge of the blank page with a dynamic screenwriting duo who have an extraordinary and inspiring story of how they got where they are today. Daniel Fajemisin-Duncan and Marlon Smith grew up together in South London and now work together as a highly successful screenwriting partnership for film and television. Their debut was the critically acclaimed Channel 4 drama series Run, and they went on to pen Sky Atlantic's BAFTA-nominated hit drama Save Me, starring Lenny James, who many will recognise from The Walking Dead. So we're going to explore all things screenwritery and work out how an idea can sometimes, if we're lucky, end up as screen reality. I'm really, really pleased and delighted to welcome to this session Daniel and Marlon. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, Daniel. Hello, Marlon. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share some of your experience with many of our young and aspiring listeners out there. So let's start off by talking a little bit about lockdown. So obviously the industry's in, no one could do anything. Is it different for writers?
I think for not for Marlon and I, maybe for others, but we usually work from home. So for us, it was like more of the same. The only thing is sometimes we head to a coffee shop or, like a bar sometimes just to get out the house. So we missed that. But to be honest, it's just been like the same, but on steroids.
Yeah, working from home is pretty much the standard thing. The only difference, I guess, was having company because my wife and my son were also here on lockdown. And so I didn't get much done. But yeah, it's kind of just like Dan was saying, it's kind of normal for us.
So you live, as writers, you live in a state of sort of semi-permanent lockdown, basically.
yeah. How you put it like that, yeah.
Or the same,
Very true.
And so maybe, Daniel, can you just tell us a little bit, what are you guys working on? We like to start these sessions sort of with now, and then what we'll do is we'll track back in time, as it were. So what are you guys working on right now?
Well, at the moment, we are working on the two projects that I think that were in the initial email that went out. So 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, a modern-day adaptation of that with Liza Marshall, who recently did the TV show Temple, which was on Sky One. And we are also currently doing a film with working title that hopefully will be announced very soon, and a Netflix TV show, an episode for another really good writer called Gregory Burke, who did the film 71. He has a TV show set up at Netflix with the makers behind Gangs of London, and so we're doing an episode for him as well. And then there's quite a few things, and I guess lastly, probably best to mention that we're also working on a Channel 4 project, which is all our own. It's like a one-off miniseries about Cherry Gross, who was unfortunately a victim of police brutality, and the effects of what happened to her led to the 1985 Brixton riot, and it's a family drama about how they coped with that and fought for justice all the way up until about 2014, actually. So yeah, there's a few things there.
I mean, that is a lot. I mean, and so as a screen, because obviously you guys, I think it's amazing to be a partnership, and obviously we'll talk a little bit more about that. But maybe Marlon, you can just tell us. I mean, obviously Daniel's telling us a lot of projects that you're working on at the same time. So how does that dynamic work, just day to day, practically? I mean, are you collaborating on every single line of every single script, or is one person doing one and the other's another? Are you like a mini corporation? Like, tell us how it works.
It's kind of like we are working together. I guess this kind of feeds into a bit about process as well. But when you've got like numerous projects like that, basically one will concentrate on one, and whilst the other is dealing with another. And we like to rewrite each other in a way. I guess it is. We always say it's kind of like a diamond shape. So when we're beginning to work on a project, we'll work very closely together and break the story and, get it into a shape that we want it to be, where we want to go. Always try and have an ending if we can. And then one of us will go away and write, and then we'll come back together and basically edit each other's work, and then we'll switch over. So you can be working on 3 or 4 things at one time. And I guess the dynamic, the reason why we work well as a duo is usually the ideas that we come back with once we're editing are better than what's down on the page. So that's kind of how it works. We're able to keep the plate spinning by constantly moving around. It's like a merry-go-round, carousel.
I love it. So I can imagine that when working in a duo like that, when it's working well, I mean, that's great, right? Because you've got another brain to look at what you've written. And, a writer's life, I know from my own experience, you write something and you have that moment, don't you, where you think, is that any good? I just don't know. And then you often have to wake up the next morning, and then it's difficult to trust yourself. And so a lot of writers end up with a very trusted another set of eyes, be that their agent or someone who passes it. But you've sort of got that, I suppose, inbuilt into the partnership. Is that kind of part of it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think
1,000%. Yeah, I think you hit the hand on the nail there.
Yeah, and that's one of the beauties, I guess, of having that person there, because like what you're saying, sometimes as a writer you can mull over an idea for so long, but with us, I can have an idea and give him a call and say, what do you think of this? And he'll usually say, no, it's not very good.
That's not true.
No, he'll usually, it's an answer straight away, so you can move on. You can test it out, see what it is. But it's kind of like you get an instant kind of feedback, which is very helpful.
Yeah, it's great. Well, we'll talk more about process and partnership a bit later. But I think that this idea of the partnership, you guys have such an amazing story that let's investigate sort of how you ended up sort of starting to work together. And it is inspiring, I think, because you started so young together and you've been working together for so long. So let's just sort of backtrack a little bit, and we'll start off by talking about Run, which I think was your first, I'm right, so your first sort of major thing. Before maybe though we see or hear the story of how this run happened, let's take a look, if we can, at the trailer for Run. So some people may not have seen it, but it was on Channel 4, and it got a fantastic amount of great press at the time, and it was a brilliant show. So let's take a look, if we can, and then we'll hear the story of how Run came about.
I have returned very early on in this episode to say that obviously we can't play the trailer because you won't be able to see it. Now, there is actually a video that's going to be played slightly later on, which will be in this episode. Normally I talk and dramatise what you would be seeing for you in a really interesting way, but the video later on is mostly talking heads, so you're not going to miss out on that one, so we're just going to let it play. It's a cool behind the scenes episode, or video rather, about a pilot that they put together. But the first video that you're about to, or would be about to watch, is irrelevant. It's a trailer for Run. You can watch it on YouTube if you want to go and find it. Otherwise, it's just lots of people having a really bad time, and it's actiony and it's exciting and it looks like a great show. And did I mention it has Olivia Colman in it? So there you go. That's what you've just seen.
Amazing. So that's where it all ended up. But let's kind of rewind the tape by quite a lot of years. So how many years prior to that going out did you guys first meet?
As in like meeting each other for the first time. Yeah. We were like 14 years old, I would say. Yeah, about then. So I'm not good with maths, but a long time ago.
Daniel, can you talk us through, so how did you guys first meet, and what were you up to in those super early days?
We kind of grew up in the same area. We went to, I think we first met at a youth project that was run by the police during the summer holidays. And then a few years later, we bumped into each other at college, a sixth form college, and became proper friends there. And also realised that we were the only ones, along with our friend Jonathan Pearson, who directed and co-created Run with. Us three were the only ones who were really interested in doing films for an actual career. Everyone there obviously loved films, and we had film geeks there, but we were the only ones who were putting pen to paper. And we also made our first short together, which was on an old Hi8 camcorder. And yeah, we were just like, I guess, lucky enough to find each other, and it kind of began that way.
Wow, that's amazing. And so let's talk a bit about that. So who had the camcorder at that time?
Marlon.
Yeah, I bought one of those old Hi8 cameras. Really, I mean, at the time it was really top quality. But you know, when you look back on it now, you probably wouldn't be able to get a picture out of it. But I bought one of those and was desperate to start making films, to start doing something. And then I met. I reconvened with Dan. You know, we knew each other from the area, and then him and Jonathan, they were actually making a film when I first met them. They were actually in the middle of making a film, and it blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe it. I've actually met two people who are actually doing something, because around where I lived, if you said you wanted to make movies or get into the industry, it was laughable, or it was just like, that is a dream that's never going to happen. You kind of got to get over yourself type stuff. And so, you know, I said to them, I've got a camcorder, you know, let's make something. And we made a really bad kind of 8-minute movie after they'd made their first film.
And how old were you guys then, Marlon?
We were 17. 17, yeah.
And so when they were making movies, I mean, some people might think that meant there was a big crew and that they were somehow doing, like, what were the movies? Can you just give us a sort of a real, like, view of what it was like in those early days? What were you doing when you were making those movies?
We were basically, it was like run and gun, you know. It was, you know, go and stand over there with the camera and use all available kind of light, and, you know, shoot in the pitch black, not really knowing whether you were going to be able to see what it was that you were filming. You know, it was as on hands on deck, everyone chipping in as well. You know, even at that young age, everyone was chipping in. Anyone that you wanted, who you asked to be involved, were happy to be involved. I mean, borrowing cars and using ketchup as blood and things like that. You know, anything that you can think of is what we were doing to get the film over the line. You know.
We often say that actually the nice thing for young people who are starting to do this, you need to rope in a lot of favours in those very early days when you're doing stuff. But actually the good thing, if you say you're making a movie, right, people tend to want to help, you know, because it's a cool thing. So Daniel, is that what you found when you were 17? Is that what you were doing? So saying, I'm making a movie and see what you could get. Yeah,
no, everyone was really interested. And a lot of the time they wanted to just be in it, you know, like... Can we be in it? Like, let me play a role. But yeah, we were using like friends' cars, because at 17, it was when a lot of us were just starting to drive. You know, have got their license and were driving, and so it was practical help like that. And also, can we use your garden? Can you know, stuff like that, or can you get your parents to allow us to film in their attic or their garage, or it was very, 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 very practical. And also we found that even if people couldn't help, they were really interested in wanting to say it afterwards. It garnered a lot of interest just in our immediate kind of social circle.
Yeah, cool. And so you guys basically were the only kids who were interested in this stuff in your community type thing, and so is that one of the things that drew you together, I suppose, in those early days?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like Daniel was saying, people did love film. Everyone loved watching films, going to the cinema. But doing something about it, I think more because everyone just thought it was kind of like a pipe dream. Is like something that we'd never, coming from where we were coming from. There's not even no point in doing that. How would you even get down? How would you even go down that avenue? How would you even do that? And we were the only ones really who were, writing in our spare time, and who, actually thought, we can do this. We don't need to wait for anyone to kind of do it for us. The only way we're gonna, draw any attention or get anyone to watch what we've made is to make it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of solidified our bond even at that young age.
Well, I think that is so inspiring, because listen, that is what every young person thinks. They all think somewhere inside them, every young person thinks that it's a pipe dream of some sort, right? Because no one knows. And so to hear a story of how you guys, actually ended up where you ended up, where you started thinking it was a pipe dream, absolutely inspiring. So let's go. So that you were doing that at school, and you were at kind of college, and you'd met on this course. Then you were doing sort of stuff, and then I think you mentioned to me that there was a period where you kind of almost walked away from it, and then you came back to it later. Maybe Daniel, can you talk us through that?
Yeah. I guess that was. I mean, we look back now, and we see that as we were kind of growing up and becoming adults, and that meant there were some things that took our attention away, girlfriends, jobs, moving out of the house. And so it was hard to maintain that focus on wanting to be a filmmaker. But in hindsight, it was really valuable because we were just living life and had never really forgotten about it. We always knew we were going to get back to it. It's just that we just spent maybe a lot less time than we had done when we were in college and moving into university. And so, yeah, that was for a number of years in our 20s. And it was around about 26, 27 that with changing technology, really. Digital cameras were becoming a lot better. And video online was becoming more of a thing, and we saw an opportunity, like Marlon said, to kind of go back to just hands-on doing it ourselves and just getting stuff out there. And we kind of see that as our learning to be an adult years, and then we poured a lot of those experiences into the work we were doing once we did catch up with it again.
And so, Marlon, once you guys came back together, as it were, was Run an idea at that stage?
Run was an idea. It went through a few slightly different names, but the idea was always, because of what Dan was saying, the advent of smart cameras, and it was around the time where people had just started watching content on their phones. There was the thought that maybe you could do really bite-sized series of Run based on a character. So you would do kind of each series would last 30 minutes, split into 7-minute chunks. You could easily download it onto your phone and watch it on your phone and stuff like that. And so we decided, we had already kind of come up with a series of characters that were going to inhabit this world in much the same way that it was on Channel 4, but we were going to do them in much smaller chunks, and we decided to focus kind of on one of those stories and write the script for that story. And I was in contact with a producer called Jamie DeCruz, who he was mainly making documentaries at the time, but he had a really big interest in getting into drama. And I'd shown him loads of stuff along the years that he wasn't really, into, or he felt needed a lot of work. But it felt like we had plowed so much into this script and this idea that it was already really developed quite a bit. And he really loved it and wanted to, develop it further with us. And just as a lesson to whoever's listening, sometimes development can take a long time. When you're working on an idea with a producer or a broadcaster, development can take a while. And we were still very early and fresh in our careers then. And we were kind of impatient, which I think is a good thing for, young filmmakers coming up. And we decided to plow our own money into making that pilot, rather than wait for movement to be made on his end, because he was very much into it. It wasn't because he wasn't into it. It was just a bit slower than we wanted. We decided to make it. So me, Daniel, Jonathan, and another guy called Adam, who produced the pilot, we put our money into it and we made it. And that's kind of what got us a lot more attention, I think, from broadcasters and got us kind of in the door in a way,
Because this is such an amazing story. Because tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, Mark, but you guys didn't at that stage have a lot of contacts in the industry necessarily. So was at that early stage, this producer who you'd contacted was almost your window in? Because a lot of people will say, how do I even make that first step? And I think I read that it was like a family friend who was. Yeah,
well, Jamie's kind of like, he is a family friend, and he's someone that, because he was in a way like me in a way, he had off his own back forged his own path into the industry, and so I always looked up to him. So showing him projects and stuff like that was always important to me, like to get his kind of approval in a way. And he had, like I said, he had never really been into the stuff that I'd shown him before, and always gave me helpful tips about making it better, and notes in a way, from that early stage. And me, Jonathan, and Daniel had always been so kind of like singular in our voice. We always felt that the drive and our passion is what was going to make it. But I think that we needed kind of like a champion in a way, or someone to get us into certain situations and in front of people, to prove to them that we were capable of doing it, And I think
that young people do. They hear people say phrases like, so we wrote this script and then it started getting sent round production companies, and people just go, hold on a second, let's just pause that step. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at home, I've got a script on my laptop. How am I getting people at Channel 4 to read that, or BBC or whatever? So to backtrack and make it real. So you guys are there, you haven't got a lot of contacts, you've got this guy who's really championing the project, you've shown stuff for years to, and then and I love this about you, you got a bit impatient, it wasn't happening. And so maybe Dan, you can pick up the story. And when you say you went out and made it, what amount of money are we looking at, and how are you guys making a TV show? And it was about half an hour, I think, the pilot that you shot, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the idea, because back then webisodes were the thing, little 5 to 7 minute chunks that you could watch on, because video on phones was very new as well, so you could only watch like 5 or 7 minutes. And so we thought, you could, in a way, you could do an entire series if there's just 5-minute episodes, kind of like quick out in a strange way, but that's what we were thinking about back then. And it back then we put all our savings into it, myself, Marlon, Jonathan Pearson, Adam Dolman, all of us put the money in. It came to about 15 grand to do that 27 minute pilot that you mentioned there. And we mainly funded that with a bit of savings we had, but mainly working. All of us had day jobs of some kind or another, and so it was about working during the day or whenever we were on weekends, and then and everything we got from that, trying to funnel that back in to basically. So a lot of the time we were working the short, and it helped because, we weren't working most exciting jobs at the time.
Well, I think that's the commitment, isn't it? So you're working day jobs and you're playing all of that money into this, your shot, the big shot. And I think that's a real lesson. We're going to take a look, guys, actually. We've got a video which shows some of this sort of pilot being made and you talking about it. So let's just have a look at when you guys sort of put your money where your mouth was and decided to basically get out there and do it yourself, which is the thing that largely kind of leveraged the show into production. So let's just take a look at a couple of minutes of that.
Jamie.
Marlon's always written scripts and always had like really interesting ideas, and so he sort of sent me things and we've talked about them, and then out of the blue Marlon just sent me this kind of concept for Run and said that he wanted to come in and talk to me, and they came in with this kind of very sort of crazy concept about short dramas made for the internet.
And it kind of grew and grew, and we ended up shooting a whole sort of half-hour pilot. We self-financed it, so all four of us contributed, put our own money into it. We did all the locations ourselves. Dan and Marlon did all the script supervision, all the continuity. I mean, the catering was wives, girlfriends, mums, dads, and we just didn't have a huge number of pairs of hands to help us do it, so it was pretty full on.
Hey, John! Who's that? It's Michael, come here, man. Who? Michael, come here! Get in! I was lucky enough to be kind of part of the original concept of Run when they did the pilot a few years ago. It's really kind of guerrilla tactics because this is something that they put in, invested in their souls.
The end sequence was tough. I mean, it was because it's literally just running and gunning. For the person on the street, what they would have saw was like a couple of guys around the camera. John, the director, probably barking orders at someone. In front of the camera, you would have seen two guys chasing each other.
We were running down the road with cameras, shooting in the train station when we weren't meant to. Having to negotiate with the guy that was working on the station at the time.
I remember one incident when the guys ran on the train, like it's just an intense chase, it's getting towards the end of the story, and this couple looked up and they thought it was happening for real, and they're like, they're going to try and run to the other end of the carriage, and when we had to cut, say, no, sorry, we're just filming. And once we shot the kind of pilot with Adam and had like Jamie's input, he really helped push it to what it is now, which is like a 4-part Channel 4 drama. So it's had a very, very unconventional start.
Amazing. Such an inspiring story. You got out there and you did it. So let's just jump. So you got out there, you got your mates together, you piled in all your money from your day jobs, you shot that, and then you did. How did you get Lenny James involved, who's the sort of the face that people will often recognise? How did that come about, Marlon?
Well, we had wanted to work with Lenny ever since, because he had written a show, I think it might have been in 96 or 97, might have been 95, but he'd written a show on the BBC called Storm Damage, which kind of was very inspirational for me and Daniel. So we'd always wanted to work with him. And the character of Richard, we'd written it with him in mind. It's kind of like we put all our bets on one actor. Like literally from the first line of dialogue, the three of us, me, John and Daniel, were kind of like, it has to be Lenny, it has to be Lenny. It's almost like every day it has to be Lenny. And we were kind of like halfway through the script and we were like, we should probably, they were talking about casting and how to best approach him. And we just decided to write him a letter, and just be completely honest and tell him, how inspirational Storm Damage was to us and how we had written this for him, and how it could only be him. And luckily enough, he came back and said, thanks for writing to me, and if the script's good, I'll do it. And so there was no pressure on us. It had to be it had to be good. But luckily, we sent it to him, and we've managed to have an amazing relationship with Lenny ever since then. But yeah, the lesson is just to be bold, I guess, to go for it. If you really want someone, they might not get back to you. And luckily enough, this time we did manage to make contact with him. But yeah, we laid it all out there on the line for him in a letter.
It's a brilliant part of the story because, let's be clear, you guys, right, did not know him at the time. This wasn't like you were writing on. You, in fact, didn't have any connection with him in any way at the time. So you're writing a letter to someone who you've basically seen their work on television or in the cinema and gone, we love that actor. And you just had the boldness to write them directly a letter. And I mean, just simple things. You probably sent it to their agent, right? I mean, that's the address you would have found. You didn't send it to his home address.
The agent. Yeah.
We sent it to his agent.
So you sent it to his agent. But I think the other key thing about that story for young people listening is that, it was who you chose, and who you chose was super smart, I think, because, if you do that with, Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, you don't get that. But I'm not sure how many letters like that Lenny James received from people who were passionate about his particular work and could really reference that. Do you feel, Daniel, that was an important thing for him?
Indeed, yeah, and you're absolutely right. If anyone wants to think about doing something like this, it's really important to find actors, first of all, that you genuinely do love their work. So I would say that was the base for us. We genuinely were interested in what he had done and him acting in it, and we were just very fortunate that I guess he was in a place back then where he maybe rarely would have got a letter like that. I think that's very different now because he's grown and is a lot more famous, if you like. And well known, but yeah. So I think the timing was perfect, and also that it was tailor made for him. I think a lot of actors, no matter what level they're at, would love that. It's not just something we've written and you could do it. It's like, no, it can only really be you. And if you say no, we have to rewrite it and go a different direction. So yeah, I would say you're absolutely right. And it's about picking the right people who you're into, and seeing if there's some kind of synergy there.
I mean, so Lenny signed up after you guys essentially sent the letter, and then he later read the script. And then just give us a sense of, because a lot of writers spend a lot of time writing, but very few writers get to see their work on a Channel 4 series or whatever. What was it? Just talk us through, Marlon, maybe that little moment for every writer where you suddenly realised, oh my God, this is actually happening. And then you were watching it in the way that you dreamed about it. Because I think you said, how long had you been working on it? By the time of broadcast, how long had Run been a thing for you guys?
I think it had been about 6 years. So 2007 to 2013, I think. Yeah, that was it. And seeing it filmed was, like you said, it was pretty amazing. And I think what was brilliant about Run and what I've learned along the way is how collaborative it is to be a writer. You write something which is like the blueprint for what the show or the series is going to be, and then all of these people come in and they kind of elevate it. They bring it to almost like another level. And that was beautiful to see. I think when you're younger, you can be quite precious as a writer and what you write on the page is in stone, and this is how it's going to be. And I think what Run was as a learning curve was like all of these kind of like different facets of filmmaking can come in and just elevate what you've put on the page. I think that was a great lesson, and that was wonderful to see as well.
Incredible. And so let's briefly, because I want to get to some questions, guys. So do get your questions in, do send them through, and we will put them very shortly to the guys. How did then Save Me come about off the back of Run? Maybe Daniel, can you just talk us through what was the process there? Because obviously Save Me had a really big, footprint on Sky, and that was great. But how did that come out of, or did it come out of Run? What was the process there?
Yeah, no, it came directly out of that. So we were successful in getting Lenny. The show did really well. Mara and I managed to win an RTS award for best drama writing, and then a BAFTA for best breakthrough talent. And he really enjoyed being a part of that and wanted us to write on a show that he was developing with Sky at the time, because he felt that it was in the same tone as Run, and it had that same kind of authenticity. So he said, I've written a couple of the episodes, and I want you to write one with me, and also help shape where the show goes and how it ends. It kind of snowballed from there. And the great thing is that it was, it evolved from us, writing him a letter to be a part of our show, and now he took, we went to dinner, and then he kind of laid out what he was looking for his show. It was as a direct result.
So I think the lesson there is that it's about people, right? Isn't it? It's about nurturing relationships, and that for young people who get in, we often talk at Young Film Academy about, be good. Be good people, because good people like good people, and then that's how it works. And obviously Lenny has played a big part in your careers and the development of those, and those relationships are gold to some degree. Is that how you see it, Marlon?
Yes, for sure. I think it's all about kind of relationships, particularly at a younger age as well, where maybe you're at a place or an environment or in a college or a school where maybe there aren't people who are as passionate as you are. I think it's really important to try and find community and try and find people who you can have long-lasting relationships with, who have as much passion as you do. I think community is really, really important. Even if it's going to an event, or I was always quite bad at networking and going to those social things, but I realized their power, because even if you're just meeting someone for the first time, that's a relationship that could last for years. I know this person who does this, or I know this person who I met this person once at a little party or something like that, or a little get together of other filmmakers. And relationships are really important.
Well, this is great, guys. So we're going to start opening out some questions. So guys, do send in your questions, and a reminder that if you'd like to ask the guys your question yourself, please just write audio afterwards, and we will try and get through as many of the questions as we can. Obviously, there'll be quite a lot about process, I'm sure. So let's start off with this question from Octavia. Octavia is 16, and I think we're going to hear Octavia's question herself. So Octavia, go ahead. We can hear you.
What software do you use for writing film and TV episodes?
Let's ask that to Daniel.
Hi, Octavia. Well, we use Final Draft, which is probably the most popular screenwriting software that's out there, and it's used widely over here in the UK and in the USA. However, there are others. So if for whatever reason you can't use Final Draft because it can be quite pricey, Fade-In is a very good one that is a lot less money and can do pretty much the same things.
That's great. And I think that there are... let's actually put this sort of part two of that question, because we get a lot of this from students who want the practical thing about writing scripts. They say, does it matter that scripts all look the same way? Does it matter that they're in the same font? Why is that important? Marlon, what would your take on that be? What's the importance of using software to formalise the format?
I think it's just a very... I think it's just a very simple way of... You have to realise that various people, lots of different people are going to be reading your stuff, and I think it's just a very simple way of breaking down what your story is. It's the perfect way of formulating and giving breath to your scenes and so on. I think sometimes it can take, if you have written stuff in a way that's kind of like, there's a very big difference between writing a play, so a film is scenes. It's basically like, you're putting together a puzzle and placing them all together. A play is very much just like, it's like a load of prose and lots of speeches and stuff like that. I think it's really important to formulate, to put a format to your script, just so the person in their mind is kind of seeing how the scenes will come together. especially if you're trying to attract, a director, or even if you're thinking of directing yourself. Is that format is important for pacing, and it's just a very simple way of doing it.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I'd add to that actually, a lot of our students ask, does it, if their script arrives and it's in a Word document format and the font is in, sort of Helvetica or whatever, and it's not in exactly that font, people do immediately, it just feels amateur in some way. And especially if you're looking to get agents, things like that, that those little markers of your competency just can say a lot. So I do think it's worth, and it is worth adding, there are some free online screenwriting software tools that are available now. And can I just ask, how does it work how do you physically collaborate on a single script when you're not in this room together, or do you write in the room together? Marlon?
It's kind of, so we have that diamond shape that I was talking about before. If we are working on, it kind of varies. If we're working on a series, we'll be together, we'll break what the series is going to be and have kind of like a shape from beginning to end. And then one of us will go away and maybe write up like a treatment about, and give that series more detail, put some more meat on the bones. We'll come back together. I will edit that, tell them ideas and then go away and rewrite. If we're working on a feature script, depending on how tight the deadline is, I mean, we can sometimes be working in the same room, but usually it'll follow the same kind of process. We'll break the story together, go as detailed as we can in that way, and then go away. One of us will go away and write the pages to a deadline, to our own forced deadline, and then we'll come back together and go over those pages, and then the other person will take those pages away and rewrite.
Gotcha. Does one of you do the heavy lifting about actually doing the first draft? Because we all know the first draft is the hard work of, oh God, it's like one of you the draft guy and the other one is the come in and polish guy.
We alternate between those roles. I wish Marlon could always do the first draft, but it will fall to me or fall to him. You know what? That is a lottery. It entirely depends on what's happening on the previous project as to who's going to step in to the blank page on the next. Let's
deal with, whilst we're here, actually, Daniel. So can you just talk us through the blank page? Because like a lot of young people they describe, it's a daunting thing, a blank page. That little cursor winks at you. There's nothing there. You're inventing the entire world. There's no equivalent of at least with a camera, actually. You just turn your camera on, you point it at a street, and there's a street. But when you've got a blank page, you've got to write the street. You've got to write the weather. You've got to write the light conditions. You've got to write what people are wearing, thinking, doing. It can be really overwhelming. And how do you guys, over time and with experience, how have you come to deal with that first thing? Because once you've done your first 5, 10, 15 pages, you're into it, right?
That's right.
How do you get over that inertia? What advice would you offer to young writers?
Well, there's a cheap trick. One is you've likely written an outline before you should add, outline your story before you start the script. So you can kind of cut and paste that into the actual script document and start separating that into scenes as, that's going to be outside, so exterior, interior. And that's a good way of just getting some word on the screen so you can start picking it apart. Because I think for a lot of people, rewriting or at least rearranging and polishing or changing something that is already there is a lot easier than starting to write interior house there and moving on from there. So that's a kind of a good way of tricking yourself. And then another way is maybe a lot of the time this can happen. I know how that scene's going to go. I kind of know the bits of dialogue that are going to be in that scene. And I'm with that, even though it's not the first one. Or I don't know where it's going to be, but it's again words on paper, and then I can build up from there or down from there. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, totally. So the blank page, get through it. Okay, great. So this next question, we've got an anonymous question here. This one, let's give it to Marlon. Are there lots of writers who write together, and do directors and producers like working with writing teams rather than individuals?
I think it can. I think it can vary. I think in our experience, there haven't been that many duos. There aren't that many people who have written together. I think that I'm not sure if I'm misremembering, but in our experience, most of the writers that we have met have been solo writers. I think a lot of that is to do with over in this country. I mean, when we were first starting, a lot of the screenwriters start off in theatre. So theatre is very much a kind of like a lot of the time is someone writing by themselves and solo, and they transition into television. But I think that directors and producers, I think that they like to work with writers as early as possible. I'm not sure whether it matters whether you're in a duo or whether you're by yourself. I just think that it's beneficial as well for a writer to work with a director as soon as possible. I think to get that writer in there as soon as possible, and the writer is basically going to make everything that you put on the page. So it's good for them to have eyes on it and be working out with you the scenes that make sense, that are necessary, that are important to the story, that have worth. And I think a director is very good at showing you stuff that will be cut along the line. There'll be stuff that you lose from your script eventually. And that having a director on board as early as possible, streamlines and makes your script a lot better. So I think it's...
Yeah, I mean, maybe we touch on the partnership angle there, because, we've talked a lot with our speakers about lifestyle and, what it is to genuinely work in these industries. And I think, people will know that often one of the allegations or the things that people will think a screenwriter's life isn't fun is they'll go, it's very lonely. It can get quite isolating, stuff like that. So maybe Daniel has the sense of partnership and working together. Has that been a way through that? Has that meant there's a lot less of that?
Yeah. That's what a duo is great for. You can lean on each other because writing is a very solo and solitary profession. But even if you don't have a writing partner to lean on, we feel it's important to try and get in contact with other like-minded people. People who don't just like film, but really want to have a career in it, want to dedicate their life to it. And so that can help as well, like to either be a sounding board or just to kind of meet up. And, sometimes you don't always have to talk about your work. You could just meet up and go and see a movie or something like that. It's being around like-minded people who have the same passion. We would say that's imperative. No man or woman is an island at all. You need friends, effectively, to help see you through.
And it's what we've talked about a lot of Young Film Academy and young people who come on our courses or some camp or anything. They often just say, this is their opportunity to meet like-minded, creative young people. And we often are amazed. We'll get an email from a student who's met 4 other students on our camp or course, and then they've gone off and made their own film, and they send the film to us. And that's just so much part of the process, meeting other like minds. Okay, so we've got this is from Hannah, who's 15, and she asks, let's give this to Marlon, have you ever had a specific piece of dialogue that you felt defined a character? Have you ever written it without knowing exactly where in the script it would go?
I think that those kind of things, I think that they happen in the process. I think that one of the good things that I've learned along the way is that sometimes the best way to explain the motivations of a character are through action. I think sometimes by trying to find a phrase or a word or a sentence to define a character, you kind of box yourself in, because you end up trying too hard to maybe underline something or maybe do something that's a bit on the nose. It always feels like action is the first thing to go, action accentuates character. And then your dialogue and that line that, you think, okay, that's the golden line. It usually comes organically from there. I think as a writer, you always know it's like, okay, that's the line. And it almost creeps up on you. I think those are So they can happen, but usually it's not when you're like specifically looking for it. Yeah.
This is from Louis, who is 16, joining us from Stockholm. And Louis says, and Daniel, let's give this to you. Are you pressured to get into all the politics going on? And are you afraid of getting out of touch now you're a big deal?
Great question, Lewis. No. I think that we have always been engaged in our own way in the politics of the day. I think when we were doing Run, it was very much a snapshot of some of the people we had come across in our lives and who lived in our area, and we weren't afraid to we weren't pulling any punches in trying to depict that. And I think that's carried on into the work we've done with Lenny James on Save Me, and the other shows that we're developing, and films that we're developing as well. I think we don't shy away from that. And the second part of that, I mean, we wouldn't call ourselves a big deal, but thank you very much, Lou. There is, you can't, like, so the life we lead now is very, very different to the life we led back when we were just starting out. So there can be a danger of feeling out of touch or missing, the kind of zeitgeist or having your finger on the pulse. So we try our hardest to stay up to date and not all, like, so this is maybe contrast to what I was saying before. It is obviously important to move in circles and in communities with like-minded people. Similarly, it's also good to always have a hand in people outside of that, because the real world is what feeds story. Even if you're going to write like Lord of the Rings style fantasy or a sci-fi epic set 1,000 years in the future, you're always talking about today in some way, or who you are, who people are in some way, and so you always have to be in touch with that. So a great question, and yeah, we're always trying to keep on top of that.
I remember a bit of advice that I heard years back when I was on a Young Writers program, and someone asked Simon Stevens, who was running it, who's gone on as a playwright, he's a brilliant playwright, and they asked, what can I do this summer to best this, that for my writing? And he went, live. Just live. Live. Really live, because writing is about life and about living, and if you haven't lived and you haven't had experiences, there's nothing to write about. So go and live first. Okay, this next question, this is from, let's give this to Marlon. This is from Alex, who's 14, and he says, do you have an agent? Part is question one, and then question two, which we'll give to Daniel as part of that, is how many of the original pilot team have stayed together? So let's just talk about the agent thing first, Marlon. Can you say, obviously, do you have an agent, and maybe talk about how that works?
Yeah, hi Alex. Yes, we do have an agent, and your agent is a very important piece of the puzzle in your career, because your agent is basically out there representing you and trying to get you you and your work under the noses of filmmakers and production companies and so on. My advice to you in your career, and when you choose to start looking for an agent, is to do research, and to look to be with an agent who maybe represents or is associated with writers and directors who make stuff that you like and that you admire, who make stuff and create stuff that is similar to your tastes and your tones. It's really important that your agent understands who you are and as a person and as an artist, so that they're not putting you into rooms where you feel like this doesn't really suit me and what I stand for and what I'm into. So do your research and make sure that you and that person get along and that they understand you and where you're coming from in your work.
Cool. And how many of the pilot team have stayed together, Daniel?
Well, yeah, Well, it's probably important to note that we were all friends first. So yeah, we're still, still together. In fact, Jonathan Pearson, who he co-created it with, and along with Marlon, were best men at my wedding. 5 years ago. So yeah, we're all still friends, and we're developing another project with Jonathan at the moment, and we're still friends with Adam Dolman as well, who was the producer. So yeah, we're still together.
So this next question sort of comes off the back of that, Marlon, which is, how do you settle creative differences between yourselves? I suppose as part of either of you as a duo or in the wider community. How does that work?
I think between me and Daniel, you have to, if you're passionate about an idea, you have to defend it and you have to back it. But I think if you're in a duo, your ego kind of has to go out of the window. And the honest answer is that the best idea will always come out in the wash anyway. As part of the process of developing a script, you realize what the best idea is. And I think that we are very good, although we do, we're in a partnership, in a duo, and there are ups and downs, we do, I think, always go with what's the best idea, and whether that comes from me or him, it's always about the story first, rather than, who came up with it. And to be honest, by the time we're at the end of the process, I don't really remember who came up with what.
And that's so interesting, because we have young people who come on, and they work in a group, and they come up with a story, and often they find that thing of their idea isn't necessarily taken to begin with by the group, and it can be very easy for them to lose focus and think, oh well, it's not my thing, and all this, and then actually they learn during the process that they can add value at any time in the creative chain, and then suddenly they do feel ownership of that group ideas. I think that's a super important thing. And then there's the last bit of the last question here before we finish up the questions, Daniel, is how do you, I suppose people thinking about this across the world right now, but you guys obviously work at home during lockdown or not, so how do you stay motivated working at home?
The bills, you got to pay no, I'm joking. No, seriously, so staying at home, I think what motivates is knowing that, in this particular, to be specific with the lockdown, the busier you could keep your mind, the faster the time will go. If you are not busy yourself in whatever you may want to do, whether that be writing or whatever, it's going to be excruciating. Time moves faster the more busy you are. So that's in relation to the actual lockdown itself, and in terms of just like in general, like just motivating yourself to write. One thing that really helps, can really kickstart a bit of or reignite passion, should I say, is watching something that you really love, seeing someone else's work that you've really been inspired by, rewatching it or watching something new that they've done, and then after that you like, I could do that. I could do that. But I really want. And then all of a sudden you're like, I feel that fire again. I want to do what they did, or I feel that I can achieve even a modicum of the same kind of success that they did. And that's another kind of general way of kind of getting back into writing mode. Yeah. And yes, bills.
That's amazing. So guys, just in these last couple of minutes of the session, let's, there's people out there. Thank you so much, guys, for all of your questions there. And there will be people watching this who hopefully go, maybe they are 15 to 20, somewhere in that age range, and they're listening and they're thinking, I would love to be Marlon Daniel in my career. I would love to be writing the exciting, great shows that you guys are and making those. But I just don't know what I should be doing or focusing on right now that's going to give me the most opportunities a bit later down the line to maybe jump on or have a chance or shot at what you guys have done and what you've built. So maybe if we could just start with Marlon, come back to you, Daniel, just to finish off, sort of anything practically or psychologically or any bit of advice you might offer to aspiring young screenwriters in this situation.
I think that you should be on the lookout always, I think, for schemes, young writing schemes and things where you get the opportunity to share your writing. I think that's really important. I think there were loads of things out there when I was a teenager that I just wasn't aware of. I think because it was a different time, and you didn't have, jumping on Google and stuff like that just wasn't available to me. I think that there's lots of schemes out there, lots of things out there where you're able to share your writing and meet other people who write as well. And that will be really important for you, in meeting your community. And also this is a cliched one, but whenever you meet anyone and you say, I'm a writer, the first thing that you're going to say to you is, oh, what have you written? Or can I read something you've written? So make sure you have something, to share. Because that's the first thing that anyone is going to say to you when you tell them you're a writer. What have you written?
Yeah.
So yeah.
We say that about filmmakers as well. It's like, you're a filmmaker if you make films. It's that simple. So go out and make a film, because then you're a filmmaker. Same with the screenwriter, done it. And Daniel, what would you say?
Yeah, just to second that, try, like, technology is so great now, try and write something and get someone to film it, or film it yourself, no matter how, cheap it's going to be, just get out there, do it. Older, who's like, approaching 18 or over 18, you can also write spec scripts of TV shows that you really love and send them into the BBC writers' room, and that's just to follow on from what Marlon said in terms of schemes and stuff like that. They accept unsolicited material from adults or people over 18, and in particular they like specs of shows because that can show that you can write in someone's voice, but you can also add some of your own in there, that you can balance that out, and then that's really beneficial because you can get an agent that way, and it shows that you could be hired, basically, for want of a better expression. You could get a job. We can give this person a job. Look, they can write a Doctor Who episode. Isn't that great? That's what you can also do original work as well. That's also important. But just as a more practical, hands-on, showing people that you are hireable and desirable is one of the ways.
That was a great bit of advice. We just had a glitch, Daniel, when you were saying, that's the opening sentence there. So what was it exactly that you had applied to the BBC? What was it then?
So the BBC Writers' Room.
BBC Writers' Room, guys.
Yeah,
the BBC do have a scheme where you can send in your own version of a series that's ongoing, and you can write your own episode of whatever the show is that you love, and that can lead to other things involving potentially getting an agent that can help and be useful. So absolutely. And Marlon, I totally agree on that point about getting out there and discovering the schemes that are available. We know, so Young Film Academy, we have all our social media channels, and we highly recommend that all our students get on there and join them if you haven't, our Instagrams and Twitters and whatever, because what we do is we collate all the information when we hear about these schemes or these grants or these whatevers, and we push them out on those channels. So there is a way to centralise, but obviously we're not the only one, there will be others, but do spend the time, guys, get out there, follow those sort of the aggregated places that bring these opportunities together, because there are a lot. You're lucky you're young, and there's a lot of stuff being thrown at young people, so do get on those. So guys, well, thank you very much indeed, both Marlon and Daniel. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing your experience and your terrors of the blank page and some of your tips.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much
for having us.